Hope you all finished your homework, because it's AniMay17, your daily dose of anime every day in May. Now everyone find your seats, because today we're talking about the 2007 comedy show, Hidamari's Sketch. Some of you may not have known, but I actually went to college to study art. It was a great experience, and as such I found the girls' lives in Hidamari's Sketch to be very relatable. Of course, I would have had a much harder time adjusting to living on my own in high school like these girls do, but taking classes and enjoying carefree time with my fellow art students were some of my fondest memories of my education. This show is an adaptation of the still-running manga by Umi Aoki. This is already the second show I've covered this month produced by Studio Shaft under Akioki Shinbo. The visual style definitely stands out as an earlier example of Shinbo's unique directing style, but I'll touch on that a bit later. The manga, in the meantime, is written in the Four-Koma style, or four-panel comic. Instead of a traditional narrative-driven comic format, Four-Koma are like Japanese comic strips, where the artist sets up a joke and delivers a punchline at the end. These kinds of comics are pretty common, and although they're mainly concerned with rapid-fire humor, they generally follow a loose narrative with recurring jokes and continuity. Unlike American newspaper comics, these comics are released in tankobon volumes to be read like an anthology. When devising the anime adaptation, Studio Shaft made the bold move of releasing each episode out of chronological order. Seeing as how the story is mostly episodic, each episode could jump to anywhere on the timeline, and the time of year would dictate what the girls were doing on that particular day. That way, the first episode could show the girls enjoying the snow and reminisce on their year together, and then jump back to the summer they painted the apartment sign together. It keeps what would be an otherwise pretty repetitive story a little more exciting. I've heard arguments that the show can be enjoyed chronologically, but they do a decent job of foreshadowing elements and building off prior jokes. Hidamari's Sketch catalogs the daily lives of 4 high school art students living together in the Hidamari or Sunshine apartment building. Our protagonist Yuno is kind and soft-spoken, as well as pretty superstitious. Characters mentioning luck and supernatural forces is a pretty common topic in these early episodes, but is usually just played up for punchlines. Yuno's closest friend and classmate Miyako is generally clueless and obsessed with food. Her other friends Hiro and Sei are both a year older than them, but frequently hang out with them on various occasions. Hiro likes sweets and gets teased about her weight, and Sei is more reserved and intellectual. The lineup is pretty stereotypical and has decent chemistry, but I couldn't help noticing that the cast is weighed a little too heavily in the straight man category. Miyako is clearly the jokiest of the crew, but I never got a whole lot out of the others. As such, if you aren't a fan of Miyako's boneheaded antics or constant fat jokes about Hiro, then the humor just kinda falls flat. Doesn't help that other than the jokes, nothing much really happens, and the segmented timeline means that not a lot of plot can really build upon itself. Each episode's in its own little bubble and is intended to be enjoyed as such. Obviously, humor is pretty subjective, and I'm sure if I was more knowledgeable about Japan, I would enjoy these jokes more. Like, in episode 3, Miyako makes a comment about how she'd like to eat a meat bun with a side of cup noodles, as well as a couple other meal combos. I get that the punchline is that you typically wouldn't eat that much food for one meal, but I'm a big American, so I probably would eat that much and not understand the faux pas. Now, maybe if Miyako suggested eating a hamburger with a side of spaghetti or something, I would more easily understand the absurdity. I'm obviously not suggesting that the show should cater to my ignorant American cultural understanding and change all the rice balls to jelly donuts. I'm just saying the humor didn't quite click with me, and that brought down my enjoyment considerably. In contrast, I think the show has really striking visual appeal, and go figure for a show about a bunch of artists. Although not nearly as wild as some of his later work, there are definitely marks of Shinboisms throughout the show, especially in how the show stays true to its Four-Koma roots, which often only includes characters talking back and forth with a mostly featureless background. The show takes most opportunities to frame a single character talking and pair them with an abstract background of geometric shapes, outlines, gradients, and halftones. This, in addition to characters frequently transforming into cutesy or stylized caricatures, lends the show a very comic book-like style. The show also incorporates a lot of mixed media and inserts photographs into the animation, which adds a lot of visual variety. For such a cutesy, lighthearted show, there are also a few times where the directing stands in stark contrast to ramp up the drama for a scene, but again, most of it's played off for a goof. Hidamari's Sketch is a cute, relaxing, and inoffensive experience. It doesn't require a lot out of the viewer, and just asks you to sit back and take in the small pleasures of life. If the characters or aesthetics seem appealing to you, then by all means, Hidamari's Sketch is the anime embodiment of comfort food. If you're looking for a compelling narrative or even a moderately funny comedy show, this show's mileage may vary. But I can tell an effort has been made to elevate the show above its competition, and I applaud its quirkiness. But there's no time for me to take things easy. We've got a lot more AniMay17 coming, so stay tuned.